morning, good afternoon, and welcome to Las Vegas. Alice and Anthony, first off, Anthony, thank you for a great presentation. And I mean that sincerely because I feel like Anthony and myself a little bit, and I'm not quoting him, are a little bit like two old guys sitting on a porch talking about when gas prices were 10 cents a gallon. Especially after yesterday when people were talking about artificial intelligence and what's going to happen and how Alexa's going to save the world. And I wrote a blog recently about being Ubered out of your sales job and all those things. And I'm going to kind of flow along, and I guess the timing of this worked out pretty well, because I'm going to talk a lot about what does this perfect sales beast look like. And quite frankly, it's very different than what it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and it's going to be very different 20 years from now. But a couple things are going to be really important about this. Alice mentioned the concept of IQ, TQ, and EQ. I'm going to talk about what those things are. And you've heard all of them. And frankly, I think you're going to see the blending of that really goes to what Anthony talked about and others have talked about how do we go to the future. And if you think about a quote I found, and I went old school here, Einstein, and it says, "I fear the day that technology will surpass our human interaction and the world will have a generation of idiots." When I think sometimes if we think about what goes on with technology as an example, it does turn us into a little bit of an idiot. And I can tell you this story real quick. I have a very close friend who's got a 10-year-old and an 11-year-old, and they happen to have Alexa. And I didn't know this existed, but you can actually get basically a dot that goes to Alexa, and when you push the dot, it orders whatever you want. Well, his 10-year-old son decided that in the Amazon account that they needed a Cheez-Its dot. So they have a Cheez-Its dot, and at 10 years old, you figured you push the dot, the Cheez-It showed up at the living room, at the front door, right? Instant gratification. Well, the reality is they really don't because Amazon's got to get them there. Well, so he kept pushing the dot, going to the front door, figuring out where the Cheez-Its were. Well, about 4 days later, after all this happened, my friend wound up with 132 boxes of Cheez-Its. Well, that's kind of the equivalent of technology making us a little bit of an idiot. So when you think about where you're going from that perspective, I kind of found this last quote. "It may be the information age, but it takes more work to earn more money, and you're overwhelmed by the information. But here's the key to that. Information does not equal knowledge or wisdom. And to deliver knowledge and wisdom, you have to have an emotional capability of connecting with people to deliver that wisdom and that knowledge. Because guess what? A quote that was given to me a long time ago, people do not know how much you care or how much you know until they know how much you care. So if you really know all the information in the world and have the greatest insights, but they don't think you're interested in them and their business in a way that's going to be changing dramatically, guess what? It's just like information sitting inside of Watson or some other computer. It's a lot of data that doesn't have much use. So let's talk about EQ, IQ, and TQ. And by nature, I've created this kind of Venn diagram to see they all have to interact. You just can't be the TQ side of it, which is the technical side. You just can't be a technical genius. By the same token, if you go to the EQ side, you go back to the 60s, the 70s, the Mad Men days of you can't have a 4-martini lunch and go to a baseball game and sell somebody something or take them golfing or send them a new puppy or whatever it is that you thought about, might work. And you can't just be really intelligent. So as you go forward, sales is going to be a very different world. Salespeople have always been the top wage earners in the United States. And as Gerhardt said yesterday, the fact is we're going to have a whole lot less salespeople in the future. I don't get disturbed by that. And the reason I don't is simply this, because the ones who remain are going to be the best of the best. They're going to be smarter. They are. Yeah, seriously. They're going to be smarter, they're going to be more capable, and they're going to be the people who, I hate to use a sports analogy, But I used to watch Peyton Manning, not because I liked Peyton Manning in terms of a football player, and I'm not a Broncos fan or anything like that, but the way he could direct his resources was amazing. That's what salespeople need to do. That's where it needs to become the EQ, the IQ, the TQ. You need to understand, marshal, and direct resources. Now, all of us are leaders in here, and here's the hard part about this, is guess what we have to do? We have to hold our teams and our people accountable to do that. If we let them off the hook, we let them just be the product transactional specialist, shame on you. Because guess what? You're going to be irrelevant just as quickly as they are. So we have to transition as leaders. We have to transition as salespeople. So what does that mean? Well, let's talk about IQ. First and foremost. IQ, obviously, the intellectual capability. Now, I'll tell you this quick story. When I was in undergrad school, I actually was an accounting major. And so I'm the poster child for Central Michigan University of what a failed accountant looks like. That would be me. So back in about, in the 90s, I was back at the business school, and one of the professors who I actually had at the time said, "Gosh, Jeff, it's great to see you. You haven't been on campus forever. What are you doing now?" And I said, I'm in sales and marketing. I'm like, "Oh, really, man? You went? Didn't you go to work for one of the now the big four or big three or whatever it is, but the big eight?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, how long did you stay there?" I said, "I was there 7. I'm still there actually. Been here 7 years, 8 years." He goes, "Well, how come you're not in accounting?" And I said, "Well, I made it about 6 months, and I really didn't like it at all, and I wasn't very good at it. And it was, I had to take me twice as much time to do something as it did anyone else." And he said, "So you're in sales and marketing now?" I said, "Yeah, actually, I'm doing a lot of sales. I really love it." And he looks at me dead serious. He goes, "That's where most of our least successful students go." Now, I tell that story because I'm quite proud of the fact that the professor who didn't say this actually contacted me back in the early 2000s or mid 2000s, and we actually created a professional sales institute now at Central Michigan, which is now one of the top 5 in the United States, has won like 10 national championships and done all these really cool things. And I'm very proud of the fact that 400 kids are graduating from sales every year with a sales degree. But here's the tricky part about that sales degree. They also have to have finance. They also have to have accounting. They also have to have strategy. They also have to have communications. The minor and major are structured such that the IQ just isn't the person who became a history major or journalism major and didn't make it and went and sold something. Now it's a profession. And so the IQ piece of this becomes really critical. And if you think about IQ for a second, Watson, we had somebody from IBM here, Watson can crunch an enormous amount of data, right? Huge amounts of data. More, faster, better, and everything else like that. Who thought of Watson? Who invented Watson? Human, right? A human being. It's named Watson after Thomas Edison and that whole area there, but basically, if you think about it for a second, Thomas Watson actually created IBM. All those people thought of things. Watson exists because somebody thought about it. You can't become a strategic partner with just a whole bunch of data. Somebody has to turn that data into wisdom. Somebody has to turn that data into knowledge. That's what IQ is. That's what sales IQ is. The ability to turn data into wisdom and knowledge. And this, as you can tell, I'm a little bit of an Einstein lover. But I saw this quote a long time ago, and we do a lot with diagnostics. If I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes about the solution. Well, what do salespeople do right now as they try to make this transformation? They spend 55 minutes doing what? Talking about the solution. Talking about their really cool stuff, because it's cool, they love it, we got it. So our job, as we think about this, we have to reverse that role to say, okay, a great advisor, someone who understands customers is spending a lot of time thinking about how we impact our customers in a positive way. That's where we get to the ultimate IQ. Now let's talk about EQ. This has been written about for years. I'm actually reading a book right now that's asking, can EQ be taught? Or is it just something we live with or are born with? And there are a few women in the room here. I'm here to tell you, I know contrary to all evidence, men can learn something about EQ. We can. So, but the EQ concept here is really about how do we use not only our intelligence, but our emotional understanding of creating those relationships. And Anthony had said it best. Here's a relationship. And people talked, I think it was Mario yesterday, and one of his things was talking about walking into a restaurant and seeing people, a family of 5, all looking at their phones. I found a bunch of images that this particular artist did of taking pictures and then removing the phone. And so I could give you 50 of these things. But I always find this interesting. Here's a couple, who look like they're totally not engaged in any way, shape, or form. And I show this picture because we see this more than anything. And you think about this for a second. I spoke at Selling Power a year ago or so, I think it was, and I asked everyone to put their cell phones down. That was the first thing. I walked on stage and I said, hey, if you've got a cell phone or something, could you do me a favor? Take a half hour out of your life. We've got counselors out in the hallway, but put your cell phone down for a moment. And people were like, the gasp. It was like bigger than Anthony getting a yes. It was crazy. But what happens is we get so embraced in technology, we walk into a customer, we're not connecting with a customer when we're thinking about what's going on our phone, or what's going on in our email, or what's going on the Twitter machine, or what's going on in the text we're getting, or the email, or everything else like that. So part of EQ is being connected. So to give advice, I have to be connected. To be trusted, I need to be connected. And I have to connect you at a head and a heart level. That's not connection. That's spending time. That's like spending time with a customer. This is a scene I found in Italy from last summer. And what you're going to see if you look in the background, a company came in and basically set up all kinds of good old-fashioned manual wooden games for people to interact and start doing things. And this square, before this happened, was pretty much empty. Within 15 minutes, all these people started gravitating towards there in a connected way. You see no cell phones. You see nothing. You see people interacting. You see people talking. That's what EQ is, the ability to communicate. Now, as we think about generations, and I'm going to sound like the old guy again, as we think about the generations we have coming into sales right now, they don't think this way. They don't think about that connection. They think a text is a conversation. It's not. It's a one-way communication. So dialogue, EQ becomes that. It's got to be from the heart. And so I'm talking about the perfect sales beast here, but I know all of you are leaders. All of you have responsibility in some way, shape, or form to do something to get a group of people to follow you, if nothing else, out of morbid curiosity. And how you do that in leading is exactly the same way. So I could have called this building the perfect sales leader or the perfect leader, which is you have to have an IQ, a TQ, and an EQ. And so just telling somebody to do something, it's just having somebody say, we want you to transform from an incredible product specialist to being a trusted advisor, to being someone who creates value, someone who delivers insights in a way that make more sense. You have to employ those exact same strategies in your leadership style as you do in your sales style. Because if you don't demonstrate and show how it works, guess what? They're not going to get it. It's just like training. When somebody says that if you train somebody some way, shape, or form and you don't reinforce it, it doesn't stick. If you lead people differently than you expect them to work with your customer, guess what? It doesn't stick. So I have to have that balance of I just can't tell people to open their fist. I can't bribe them with money or compensation systems. I can't do the same thing with sales incentives. I can't give somebody a big incentive to go sell more of something else just because we got to have the number this week. I've got to balance it. I've got to work together. And that's where that comes into play. And the TQ piece of this becomes, how do I now use all these different things in a way that helps me generate business? How do I make it look like I have an expertise? And how do I create that expertise? I basically call it sales Darwinism. Is the evolution of buying behavior when society and technology evolve faster than sales professionals adapt. So, if I'm coming in and telling people all about my really great product that they can find anywhere on the internet, what am I doing? I'm wasting their time. I'm giving them information they already know about. So that's what becomes the power of how we do this. That becomes we don't want to be Darwinized out of that. And we got to stop our salespeople from being the walking dead. And really then transform them into this concept of a balance of EQ, IQ, and TQ. Give yourselves a great round of applause because your homework assignment is this. I wish I could. I'm going to ask you this. What's stopping you from doing it? I'm going to tell you what it is. It's you. It's you. So thank you very much.